When the best art being made is also the most commercial, you got yourself a renaissance. He literally reinvented the entire rock and roll business single-handedly. Just deciding to not be part of society was a new idea. I guess that's one way to measure success.
I don't know what I'm measuring, but yeah.
But you know, my friend was just like, you know, if the second one sucks, just walk away. What are they going to do? You know, they can't make
Uh,
you act. You know,
right. They just knock you off in the second episode.
exactly. We weren't doing drugs to escape. We were doing drugs, you know, to seek enlightenment.
All right. Where are you?
I am in my kitchen in New York City, Greenwich Village.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. That's where you've been living for a while, or?
Yeah, quite a while.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I lived there for a while too.
Where are you now, James?
I am 1 mile north of Mar-a-Lago. Yikes. Damn. Yeah. Uh-huh. There it is. Never thought I'd be here, but here I am.
Well, I guess that's one way to measure success.
I don't know what I'm measuring, but yeah. Anything I'm measuring, it's smaller now. At any rate, I wonder, I think back around in high school, I'm going to be a writer. And I suspect that relatively early, you kind of said, I'm going to be a musician, play in a band or all that stuff. Is that semi-accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. Earlier than that, probably 13, 14.
Uh-huh.
Um, you know, it was the Beatles, like most of my generation, playing Ed Sullivan, February
We have
9th.
the same generation, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Same stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so February 9th, 1964, kind of, you know, um,
On Ed
revealed,
Sullivan. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the Ed Sullivan show.
I watched it too, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the beginning of, you know, this whole new world being revealed to us. You know, we'd never seen anything like it. And but they were a little bit too good at that point, a little too sophisticated, really, to think that you could
Uh-huh.
actually, you know, to think you could actually do it. So,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
luckily, 4 months later, the Rolling Stones came and
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
made it
Well,
look.
they always had the slick producers, the Beatles, they're very slick, and
Yeah,
Rolling Stones was more like, okay, we're coming. Although, I think Mick Jagger was pretty sophisticated, whatever, a lot of art training and all that stuff, but they didn't let it show.
no, they were like really the first punk band. They made them, you know, the Beatles had the perfect harmony and the perfect hair and
Uh-huh.
perfect
Uh-huh.
everything, you know.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah.
The Stones really didn't, you know. They kind of were wearing street clothes and you know, no harmony really to speak of, and you know, they made it look easier than it was, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
I had my little wish list for stuff to do, and one was Stevie Van Zandt, and one was James Carville, and I just talked to Carville, and he's going to do it. So that's going to be cool. He's funny and he's smart, and I like that. That's a good combo. So,
yeah,
but part of the reason with you, but what I was interested in, and I think we're very different, but I think we're also very similar in a lot of ways in terms of being kind of restless and enthusiastic, or very negative, and also, which is a little rare, both having that creative urge and also that producer urge,
mm,
liking to do our own, but also liking to help and work with other people and all that stuff. But I don't know if that's accurate, but it kind of interested me.
yeah, no, it's true, and it is rare. It's kind of two different sides of your brain, you know. Uh,
Uh-huh.
or two different sides of your ego, you know. But it's rare, and but my God, you're the most prolific human being that's ever lived. I mean, you make me feel lazy. I tell you the truth.
Yeah, my favorite word, prolific, man.
I mean, wow.
uh, yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
200 books in 50 years. Is that true? I mean,
I don't know. I don't count them. I
uh,
don't count them.
that's a
I
book
don't
every
count 'em.
3 months for 50 years. I mean,
Yeah, I think the number, you know what, it got confused. I did these short ones and novellas, right? I sort of well, not invented, but this thing of putting out novellas, and I did a lot of those in 1 year. And I think that sort of boosted the number a lot.
Well,
So, but down on the Jersey Shore, which I had some familiarity with both as a kid and then eventually I had a house down there, but um I get the feeling there was a lot of music around, a lot of clubs and stuff like that.
oh yeah, no, we were the luckiest generation ever.
Hmm.
Nothing like us before or since. It was a, I mean, the Beatles had more impact than just us wannabe musicians. They actually changed the culture to a band culture. In other words, when you went out at night, as a teenager, as you probably remember, you either, you went to the drive-in theater or you went to see a band. I mean, that's
Hmm.
all we did. So
Hmm.
it was a very, very lucky time, and once you were in a band, there was just lots of places to play. And,
Hmm.
it was just a wonderful time to grow up.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting area of thought to me because where I grew up, no, there was a drive-in theater, but there were no bands and there was no clubs and there was none of that stuff upstate New York.
Well,
And you think about these different hubs, like well, Liverpool with the Beatles, and all of a sudden stuff happens. Going back into painting, Paris a couple of times,
mm,
London weirdly in terms of theater back in the Shakespeare days, because theater was nowhere. It wasn't big anywhere, but it was monstrous in London.
mhm,
And Seattle with that kind of Nirvana and that whole thing all of a sudden exploded out there, and
mm.
you get Nashville and Memphis, not so much as centers, but places where it all came together for people that wanted to do stuff in the South, and the Jersey Shore as another place. But it is interesting to me, like all of a sudden you get a lot of people thinking about the same thing, and it's stimulating, and it also suddenly it starts becoming a creative force.
Well, yeah, and it was part of an overall creative force that I refer to that period as a Renaissance period, and I don't believe that's exaggerated. I believe when the most when the best art being made is also the most commercial, you got yourself a Renaissance, and
Uh-huh,
I
uh-huh.
think that was what was going on really '60s right into the '70s. In all the arts, all the arts were flourishing in an
Uh-huh.
interesting new way, so it was everything really at once at that time, and all feeding each other. I think just a very, very
Mhm.
exciting time to be alive. Thinking that every day is going to be better than yesterday. Had that
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
optimism was in the air, in
Uh-huh.
spite of all of the chaos of the '60s. And you know as well as
Uh-huh.
I do. I mean,
Yeah,
there
yeah,
was
yeah.
a lot of
Oh,
chaos in the
absolutely.
'60s.
Vietnam, and there was a lot of, yeah.
Yeah, protests for everything. I mean, women's rights, gay rights, you name it, civil rights. I mean, the assassinations and everything else. But
I
still,
went to the March of the Pentagon on the Pentagon, and I couldn't believe, for me, it was basically my friend and I, we hitchhiked down from New York, which, those are the days you could actually hitchhike places. And it was Vietnam. We get down there, they must have been protesting 500 things. Java ran, it was incredible. But there's actually a thing, just what you were saying, it's something that you wrote, and you said it's a matter of having high standards, which I realize is difficult now because we live in such a world of mediocrity. And we grew up in a renaissance where greatness was commercial. Not only did it exist, it was commercial. You didn't go home and say, I want to write a song that copies some other song. You went home and said, I want to write a great song.
right.
And I think that's 100%. And I don't know if it's the kids now or just the whole culture is sort of going that way. Imitation, don't sort of think bigger, think something great, and that's always been my whether I deliver or not. I'm not trying to do the same thing. I'm always trying to do something different and stretch and whatever, writing some nonfiction or kids books, stuff like that, stuff that I haven't. I did a thing. Michael Crichton's widow came to me a while back, and Michael, I had loved all his stuff, and he had written a part of a book, and she said, "Do you want to finish it?" And I said, "Well, let me read it." What he wrote, and I did want to finish it, but I thought it would be a real challenge because his stuff it has a lot of science and mine doesn't. So
Hmm.
I had to kind of, but I thought that would be cool. I love the story they had set up, and so stuff like that that kind of challenges, blah blah blah. But getting back to Jersey and stuff,
Mm.
so you get expelled at one point. I'm not saying you're a bad boy. You get in a little car crash. I don't know whose fault that was or whatever. So do you think back then you were kind of a rebel without a cause, or did you have a cause?
No, I really, I didn't feel that way. It, it just happened to be the thing I was into, just happened to be not quite accepted by society yet. So it didn't feel, um, I felt I was, kind of, joining the circus, I guess, as it came through town.
Uh-huh.
But I
Uh-huh.
wanted to be a really good acrobat. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
It wasn't an escapist thing or even a rebellion thing. Really, it was just
Hmm.
I love the music. I wanted to make the music, and
Uh-huh.
being in a rock and roll band was the way you made the music in those days. Now now it wouldn't be a commercial enterprise until the '70s. So those of us in the '60s were really looked at as freaks.
Hmm.
And
Yeah. Well, you said that little misfits, whatever, in some of the lyrics, wave your freak flag high and things like that. But part of it, I guess, is not just not fitting in, but not wanting to fit in
right, right.
because you didn't want to be. No, I don't. I'm not me necessarily, but I mean, a lot of people.
No, well, this was a new idea. I know it's hard to explain that to younger people right now, but just deciding to not be part of society was a new idea. Up until our generation, our parents just accepted, the conventional way to live,
Right.
and suddenly, with the probably starting off with the beat poets, I usually, start. I think that's where it kind of originated. Rejecting the society sort of rules, and then and that beat poetry thing leaked into rock and roll through Bob Dylan. And then
Hmm.
and suddenly we were uh, questioning the government, which very few
Yeah.
previous generations had ever done. I mean,
Uh-huh. Well, Vietnam had a lot to do with questioning the government. There's a lot of young people are going, I don't know, man, this doesn't seem right. There's something fucked up here.
exactly. Right.
And I don't want to go to the swamp, honestly, and
But
kill
that but
people that I don't know. And I'm not sure what the reasons are either. Yeah.
right, and that was a new idea. That I mean,
Yes.
I don't think that happened for the Korean War. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and drugs,
You know,
drugs,
right,
because you had a lot of people who were having experiences that, for all intents and purposes, certainly not that many people having these weird experiences, and that was really weird. In the history of the world, there's never been with so many people that, like weird thoughts and experience, whatever, and that was different.
well, but and I again, I sometimes younger people find this hard to believe also, but we weren't doing drugs to escape. We were doing drugs, to seek enlightenment and to seek information, and because uh, I called LSD the hippie Google.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
It was like that. I mean, you couldn't find out any information. It was hard to find, and drugs. I mean, you have to be honest. It did expand your mind at the time in a way. And if unless you started to do it, too often. At the time, it was a mind expanding experience. It really was. I
Yeah.
mean, one hit of LSD in those days, and you understood Eastern philosophy. You really did. Everything's connected, everything's alive.
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh,
Matter. Never disappears. It just changes form. All of I call it the scientific part of my religious beliefs.
uh-huh, uh-huh,
Um,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
but that really did do that. And so suddenly we were seeking this information because the people, our heroes, were doing it and turning out amazing work. Now we found out that by doing drugs, that doesn't mean you're going to do great work, because
Right.
the ones,
Yeah, I know a lot of friends that were doing drugs and they have not done great work.
Yeah. But if you were already
Yeah,
good
I
at,
remember one time I'm in college in New York City, and a bunch of us, and we took LSD, and nothing happened. And that would happen every once in a while. So we said, "Fuck," it didn't work. We've been cheated out of our $5 or whatever the hell it was. And we said, "Well, what the hell are we going to do?" And it was a Yankee game that night. So we said, "Well, let's go to the Yankee game. What the hell?" So we get on the subway. We're going down to Yankee Stadium, and I'm on the subway, and all of a sudden, this guy goes by. I go, uh-oh, we're on the subway now, and the LSD is going to work. And I tried to tell my friends, they didn't believe me. We got down to the Grand Concourse, and I said, "You guys got to help me across the street. I cannot get across the street." And they still didn't believe me. So I'm out in the middle of all this. And then during the game, Reggie Jackson hits a ball out near the monuments out there. It was about 900 feet and so, whatever it was, 500 feet. And I went through this whole thing of like, I can't decide whether I want to watch Reggie running around the bases or the ball bouncing out there. So I don't know if I was getting an enlightenment then or escape, but it was fun and then memorable and memorable.
but you felt all of these inanimate objects suddenly living, right? Starting to live, right? I'm sure you must have felt that, right? In
Well,
other words,
there was some of that.
the
Sure.
baseball was like alive, right? I mean, well,
The
I don't know. I think
baseball was rolling. I knew it
everybody
was
has
a
a,
baseball. I wasn't fooled about that. There were
well, I
some
think
other times when it got a little, yeah, yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
I also thought in those days I could write lyrics, which I couldn't. But I remember I was down at Vanderbilt at this point. I would go out there and I would sit there and I'd just sit under an awning for hours writing plays, I think. And they were all musicals. They were musicals. So anyway, speaking of writing, so early on, some of your success was as a writer, early stuff, right? Southside Johnny and so what's that writing lyric? I mean, I'm curious about that with in terms of how did that work for you? Right, a lot of lyric writing, stuff like that.
Yeah. It started with that, trying to write traditional. Once the first thing you had to do, you had to discover an identity because we grew up at a time when everybody had a very distinct identity, which started to dissipate in the '70s, a little bit more in the '80s, and now it's kind of gone. Oops, sorry.
Speaking of the Beatles,
Sorry about that. Shut that off. Um, um, the identity. Yeah. So at a certain point, um,
we're easily distracted now,
it's,
and we don't necessarily come back. Honey,
Southside
what was
Johnny.
I
No, no.
talking about?
I got it. I got it. Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes was really the first band that really had an identity, which was rock meets soul. Okay, it was a combination of
Uh-huh.
rock and soul because starting in the '70s, the all completely original identities of the '60s now became hybrids. So now
Yeah.
pretty much everybody since the '60s really is a hybrid of something. So we were the hybrid of rock and soul. We had rock and roll guitar with soul horns. Okay, so I started writing kind of in that genre that I was kind of inventing at the
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
More or less traditional soul songs, with rock guitar in them, and I got pretty good at it. I was pretty good at it, and then and that started to become a little bit more personal as you went, and then when I started making my own records, of course, and it had to be personal, and then I decided my identity as a solo artist was going to be political,
Hmm.
because nobody was doing that full time. There'd be a
Hmm.
song here and there, but nobody was doing it
Uh-huh.
7 on, um, and so my writing now took on a whole nother level of required a whole nother level of research because I was not only learning about myself and what's going on, but what's going on in the world, and I would choose topics for every album. Every album was a conceptual album, and had themes and sub themes, and so required research. I began to look into things a little more deeply, and the art form that working in rock and roll is more of an emotional communication. And so I would take the information that I was learning and turn it into storytelling
Hmm.
in the songs, you know. And then I would put a
Hmm.
list. I would put a list of books on the album cover if people were interested in the subject matter.
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
You
uh-huh.
know, so they
How,
could learn it.
just in terms of the line by line, how much attention would you know, like I remember reading something about the Beatles. I actually wrote a book about John Lennon, but and you find out like where some of the lyrics come from. You go, oh, okay, really? That was just about your street and nothing. There's just because it rhymed and but how much attention were you paying to the actual the lyrics themselves?
No, intensely.
Uh-huh.
Every word. You know, I knew my thing was going to be exposing our country's bad foreign policy was basically my thing. You know, at the time, um, I felt, you know, that we had gone off the rails as far as adhering to our original ideals, and that needed to be talked about. So every word really counted. And I wrote, I had a title, you know, and I wanted to make it clear that I was writing this criticism of our government from a patriotic point of view, not just, you know, just doing it, you know, just to be rebellious or whatever. So I had a title, I Am a Patriot, and I stared at that title for a good year before I figured out how to write it, you know.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
was the most difficult song I've ever written. Um, you know, so every word counted during
Hmm.
those political years. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, in my thing, obviously, and I'll come across, you know, gee, I wish I wrote that line kind of thing, you know. It's just such a big deal, and just, I mean, nobody knows this guy Vance Burgelli, but he wrote it. His first line is in one of his books, and he said, like most men, I tell 1,000 lies a day. And it's a great first line because the guy is telling you, one, you're about to read his first person book, and he's saying he's just nothing but a freaking liar. Okay. So you don't know what the hell you get, but he's going to just tell you a bunch of lies. And he also tells you about his point of view in the world because he thinks that basically everybody else is a liar too. So it's kind of like, man, one line, woo, boy, he's told you a lot of stuff there, you know, I think. Um,
That's great.
and then, well, Springsteen also the line. I did wrote. I read his, which I thought was really well written. His autobiography. I thought was really really well written. I don't know what you expect, but I thought it was great. And who's the Rolling Stone guy? Life, the guitarist. I thought his was really good too. The name of it was Life.
Oh, Keith
Yeah,
Richards.
Keith Richards. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And they were brilliant. On the cover, they said he didn't forget a thing, which was total bullshit, but it was great. Because you would get the book and go like, I don't know, man. 700 pages from this madman. I don't know if this is going to be, but it was really good. What's your notion on, so let's say in Jersey or just, you know, all the way through your life in music, why, I'm sure you ran into, you know, a lot of really good groups that didn't really make it. Well, why does some groups, or why does E Street all of a sudden make it? You know, I don't mean I don't care about that specific thing. And some bands that are really, really, really good, and it doesn't happen for them.
It's a couple of things, you know, and I always mention, you know, you got the obvious stuff of you know, you got to be good at what you do, and you got to be, you know, you got to be, you know, you need several crafts. You know, I wrote the 5 essential crafts of rock and roll in the book in great detail, but you know, the craft part of it is important. I think the work ethic part of it is important,
Uh-huh.
and having a management I think is extremely important. And the ones that don't make it, and the ones that do, sometimes it's just a matter of having the right management.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I mean, and then you know, and then an additional sort of intangible maybe is in our case having no other choice. You know,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
being unable to do anything else also helps. You know, so
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
that helps your persistence because
Uh-huh.
you know, it's not some kind of you know, noble effort of sticking to your guns. You know,
Survival.
it's
Yeah.
like, you know, you're just a total
Putting
fuck.
food on the table the next night. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just a, you know, you're a loser, as far as society is concerned, you're just another
Yeah.
loser and you
No,
keep,
when I came up and I'm writing, and if you were talking to a girl at a bar or something, they say, what do you do? I'm a writer. They say, well, have I read any of your stuff? Well, no, I haven't been published, and they walk away from you. What are you talking about? You're a writer, you haven't published anything. What is that? That makes no sense, in people's minds. Now they're okay with it, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
Somebody said, I don't know how that you sometimes choose the path of most resistance. I don't know if that's accurate, but so you got 7 years with the E Street Band, 7 years or so, and you got great friends there, and and the band is breaking out, and then you go, I got to do something else. What happened there? I'm
Yeah,
sure you talked about it a lot, but
yeah, there's a couple things, but mostly I became obsessed with politics,
uh-huh.
and felt the need to do something about it, uh,
Hmm.
just to kind of justify my existence, we're always looking for a way to do that, I think. Most of us who have any kind of consciousness,
Hmm.
always trying to,
Hmm.
find
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
a reason to be here, And
yeah.
like I
No, I
said,
see
no,
that in a lot that you do, a lot that you do. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, nobody was really doing it, and it was a particularly pernicious, that moment in time. You got Ronald Reagan, who is this grandfatherly cowboy. Everybody loves him, and just behind the scenes, hidden is this incredibly, worldwide criminal organization, called our government, and I just felt like that needs to be exposed, because
Hmm.
we're supporting every dictator in the world, half of them anyway, and our tax dollars are going to support this, these very vicious dictators and military regimes all through Latin
Uh-huh.
America, in support of the multinational corporations, basically, engaging
Hmm.
slave labor, and that was something that nobody really was talking about, and then that went all the way. I had a whole list of entanglements around the world. One of which was South Africa, and that wasn't really a big issue either at the time.
Right.
And I went down there and did some research there, and was quite shocked at what I found, and
Yeah, yeah,
said,
yeah.
got to do something about this. We got
I
to talk.
remember talking to President Clinton, who's a friend at this stage, about the most impressive person that he's ever dealt with, and he said, Mandela, South Africa, it was the most impressive human being that he ever dealt with. Yeah.
Wow.
And he's
That's,
dealt with a lot of people.
yeah.
I don't know how this is with you, and it varies with people, but I always found it certainly was true with me that it was really important somewhere along the line that somebody believed in you. For me, it was my grandmother, and she said, "You're not going to play in the NBA, so stop." No, don't stop. You can keep fucking around with it, but you're not playing the NBA. But you can do stuff. So if you set your mind to it, you probably are going to be able to do it. Did you have anybody in your life that really was like that way with you, or did you just have to do it on your own?
Nah,
Uh,
no, we got no encouragement because, like I said, I mean,
uh-huh,
playing rock and roll in the '60s was just, one step below being a criminal. I think, like I've always said, I think my parents would have preferred me being a criminal because at least it was steady work, But
uh-huh,
there was no real encouragement
uh-huh,
at
uh-huh,
that time.
uh-huh,
I mean, at the same time, I had a deeper encouragement by being the first grandson in an Italian family, you know? So, there's a certain divinity imposed upon you very young. And I grew up, my mother divorced my father, my natural father, when I was like 2 or 3.
uh-huh,
I don't remember him at all. And moved into my grandparents' house with 4 or 5 aunts and uncles, and the Italian grandparents, and so I was given a whole lot of love, and at an important stage, I think, of my life, which made me feel secure forevermore. I mean, it's supposed to be traumatic when your parents get divorced. I had none of that. And I always felt kind of secure in who I was for some reason. I think it comes
uh-huh,
from that
uh-huh, uh-huh,
early
uh-huh.
stage of just
Oh,
love.
I think that's huge.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's one thing with our son. This thing of like understanding who you are and just that core, whatever that is. And you're growing up. It's not about the acne or any of that stuff. We get it. Like acne is not your friend, but your core is still, that thing. And if you can believe in that, it's useful. Walk in your own shoes, whatever the hell it is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that helped, I think, get me through because the rock and roll thing was such a revelation. Discover, the whole band concept. Again, let me remind people there were no bands in America at that time. I mean, you went to your high school dance, it was an instrumental group, you
Yeah.
know.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So that whole idea of four or five guys
Yeah.
singing,
Some black
right,
bands, huh?
huh?
And some black bands in
Um,
those days.
well, yeah,
That
yeah,
nobody knew them.
yeah, there probably was, yeah, with singers, yeah, yeah, I'm sure there were, yeah, more in the R&B world, yeah, that's true. But in the white, the white teenage world, you didn't see it
Uh-huh. 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 Uh-huh.
very much, until the British invasion, and then everybody literally had the band,
Uh-huh.
everybody
Uh-huh.
had the
Uh-huh.
band, but it was just that communication of a band was different. I had no interest in show business whatsoever, and the band thing just felt like something else entirely.
Mhm.
It was the posse, the gang, the team, the friendship, family, and ultimately communicated community, which is what really felt like for me that made me want to do it. That made me want to be part of
Uh-huh.
that.
Uh-huh.
I didn't care.
One of the things that I think most people don't understand about the kind of art world such as it is, and is you have to kind of deal with rejection, and you have to really be able to. So if you're an actor, all of a sudden you're on top, and all of a sudden you're not on top, and you can't get hired for a while, and or if you're a writer and you're getting some reviews you're not too happy about, or that book didn't sell, or whatever the hell it is. And at one point, you got involved with an oldies tour. I guess it was right after or during the British invasion when all of a sudden that's all people wanted to play and listen to. When you had like Gary U.S. Bonds and Dion or who are in their prime and great, and suddenly it's like they're on an oldies tour. To talk about that a little bit, I mean that to me is fascinating.
Yeah, it was an incredible, you know, shame and tragedy because here they are inventing rock and roll for us to
Uh-huh,
enjoy
uh-huh.
for the next 60,
Yeah.
70 years and counting, right? And for some reason, that was the only generation that didn't flourish along with its audience and grow together,
Uh-huh.
eternally. For some reason, the British invasion comes in '64, which is basically all English bands at first, and they're all
Right.
bands and they're all English, and it
Even
puts
Herman's
all
Hermits and some that we wish didn't come.
well,
No, I'm kidding.
oh no, they were actually quite good, but
I'm sure they are. Yeah.
we could have done
The
without
monkeys,
Freddie.
give me a break. No, the monkeys were American, I guess, but
Yeah, that's right, except for Davy Jones. But but yeah, we could have done without Freddie and the Dreamers, perhaps. But anyway, it was something unintentional consequence. They put all their heroes out of work, uh, and um, and literally in their prime, in their 30s, maybe early 40s. They were all shoved off into the pastures of this oldies circuit.
hmm
Which they just hated it, and I ended up there by circumstance. That doesn't matter, but I ended up being in one of those backup bands, and then doing the oldie circuit for a while, which I loved every minute of because I'm meeting all of these incredible
uh-huh.
heroes and
Uh-huh.
pioneers of rock and roll. I met literally every one of them. And I would later have relationships with them, Gary Barnes, we would end up producing. I would end up producing Ronnie
Was
Spector.
he on Lilyhammer? Did he make
Yeah,
an appearance
yes,
on it?
Gary
Yeah.
Barnes made an appearance in Lily
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's
You
good.
know, and Little Richard I met there, and would end up being the preacher at my wedding. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
but they hated it. They hated every minute of it. They hated being called oldies.
Uh-huh.
If
Sure.
if you had three hits when the Beatles came, you played those three hits the rest of your life. you know, and it was just
Yeah.
it
No,
was
I
just
remember seeing somewhere it was a washed up. I mentioned there really weren't. Eventually, there was one club up around Newburgh, and I saw Jay and the Americans there. There was about 20 people in the thing, and they're like, "Fuck," you know. Yeah, it was. He was good. It was an amazing voice. He was unusual though because he really had a voice,
true, true.
like one of those old, the guys that would sing it with the big band era.
Yeah,
You
no, he's
know.
very, very, very operatic. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, but yeah, that's what happened, man. That 20 people in the club, and it's just a it's just a shame. But it was just a generational shift.
We were cheering for him, I'll tell you that. We were
Uh,
screaming for him, but you know,
but they're great. They're most talented. Ironically,
yeah,
they're the most talented people. I mean, I love producing those people whenever I got a chance because they
uh-huh,
actually had talent. You know,
yeah,
I mean, you had to have talent in those days. There was nobody fixing your vocal. All right, you
yeah,
you actually had to sing
yeah,
the
right,
thing.
right, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
right.
and they were just every one of them that I produced, I just loved every minute of it because they were so good. But anyway, it's just ironic. That's why as soon as I got in the studio, I started kind of bringing them back. We put Ronnie Spector and Lee Dorsey on Southside's first album and reunited the Drifters and Coasters and Five Satins on their second album.
Uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
me and Bruce did a couple records with Gary West Bonds. And I did a record with Darlene Love later, just to let people know that they're still around and they're still great. And, we owe
Yeah,
them.
Darling Love, talk about wow, somebody who people never wasn't appreciated the way she should have been.
Yeah, man. I mean,
Unbelievable. Yeah.
that album, I'm very
She
proud of.
sang about every song, every group that you would, she would actually be the lead singer, but never, she was,
Or in the background, one or the other. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
Blossoms like backed up everybody from Sam Cooke to Sinatra to Elvis. I mean, but anyway, yeah, when I did that record, I was very proud of it. And she was featured in that movie 20 Feet from Stardom, which actually
yeah, right, right. Yeah.
won the Oscar. And I thought this album's going to be the perfect happy ending to that movie, which was, a little bit, on the sad side. And unfortunately, I thought for sure we made the album of the year, but it never even got nominated, unfortunately. But I'm very proud of it. Very proud of it.
Hmm.
Introducing Darlene Love.
So I mentioned people having people to believe in you. So then there's Maureen, and I don't know why
Oh,
or how, but she believes in you. Why, whatever that's all about.
yeah, yeah. Now, later, she, she, yeah, her eyesight was never been that good, but yeah, no,
Well,
no.
you were sort of a rock idol looking guy, younger, but like so many of us, we go from being kind of, rock idol looking to kind of character actor look. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Well, no, later on, a handful of people did start believing in me. I should say. I mean, it was only as a when you're younger there was no encouragement whatsoever, really. But later on, I found a terrific friend who became our agent, Frank Barcelona, who really reinvented the entire business, which I've started to write a book about many times, and there should be a film about him. There should be a documentary about him. There should be a lot about him because he literally reinvented the entire rock and roll business single-handedly. He became a friend who believed in me. I had a guy, Steve Popovich, who ended up signing the Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes. Bruce Springsteen was one of those people who believed in me. Lance Freed, my publisher. David Chase later when I became
What
an
is this, the
actor.
fucking award show that you just won and you're gonna, this is
That's
like
it.
the
But
Academy Awards.
but
No,
you
I'm
get
kidding.
those,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
you get those five people though later on.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
There's like five or six people that actually did believe in you
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
when, when,
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
needed it, because,
So tell me about Maureen.
well, Maureen was a friend of mine, brought her to a show, and I, literally thought I was seeing the Bridget Bardot of New Jersey. Fell totally in love with her immediately. And
There's a good lyric line, the Bridget Bardot of Jersey. I like it.
it took me about a year to talk her into going out with me,
Uh-huh.
and then it's been great ever since. That
You have
was
the amazing wedding with Bruce there, and you mentioned Little Richard officiating, and Percy Sledge was there, right,
Yep,
singing "The
yep,
Man Loves a Woman," blah blah blah. That's cool. The
yep.
memorable. My wife, my line about Sue is, if Sue ever leaves me, I'm going with her. So you can steal that with Maureen if you want.
That's a good
Good
line.
party line.
Yeah, she's she really turned me on to all kinds of. She broadened my artistic
Uh-huh.
horizons tremendously. Just into literature and ballet and took me to my first ballet, which was just a wonderful experience. The first time you go to a place where the seats aren't ripped up, and
Uh-huh.
the
Uh-huh.
wonderful,
Uh-huh.
wonderful that incredible atmosphere of the Metropolitan Opera House or whatever it was,
Uh-huh.
you know, and
Yeah, I had a girlfriend that did that for me too. Same kind of thing. She took me to my first French restaurant. This is really cool. She was a wonderful girl. She died very young, unfortunately, but she took me to this fancy French restaurant. I'm like, I don't know what to order. This is weird for me. And without doing it to irritate anybody. And she's got some stew on her dish, and she just takes her face and she puts it in the stew and comes up and she just goes, Jimmy, forget about anybody here. This is our place. This is just us. This is, and it was great. It was great. And she didn't, and then she wiped the stew off her face, and but it was like, and don't be, it's not a big deal. It's a
wow.
French restaurant. Who cares? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was good. It was good. She was a good, really, really, really good lady. So the Young Rascals, you like the Young Rascals? Good loving and how can I be sure, whatever.
At the time, yeah,
And you introduced them at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
yes, uh,
Okay. So
that's
what
what.
happens there? Somebody's watching you and
Yeah, it just so happens David Chase happens to be watching, and he's putting together a new TV show. He had been in TV his whole life.
you remember the name of the show?
The name
Of the TV show he's putting together?
oh, it was called The Sopranos, which everybody tried to talk him out of. Think they you know
People are like that. Yeah.
look, I think it's an opera, a show about opera. Yeah, so I get a call from him, and at the time I really was kind of out of the music business, and he said, want to be in my TV show. And I was like, man, that's good. What a wonderful thing. But I said, no, not really. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and he was like, what do you mean, no? I said, well, I'm not an actor,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Isn't that kind of a, prerequisite for this TV thing? And he was, he was like, well, you actually are an actor. You just don't know it yet. So
Uh-huh.
come on
Uh-huh.
down. And then I went down and yeah, and that was beginning of a whole new life. And what a gift to be given a new craft,
Uh-huh.
at that stage of the game. It's wonderful, wonderful. Yeah.
And did you know right away that you could kind of do it and it was pretty good or no?
No. I was really quite nervous about
Uh-huh.
the process because
Uh-huh.
in music, you're kind of used to more or less controlling your own destiny, at least
Uh-huh.
artistically. Not
Right.
some marketing and selling the thing, but
Right.
artistically, you're pretty much in control. And if you go in the room and you sing a song, you come into the booth and you listen to it, and well, maybe I could do a little better, and you go
Uh-huh.
and try it again. Acting, you act, and then you're depending on a complete stranger. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, well, how's he gonna know that's the best I can do? Number one.
Uh-huh.
Number two, you act, and then you see it 6 months later. You know,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Uh-huh.
like so, and plus there was so that method, the basic methodology was throwing me, and then. I said to my friend, I said, geez, this first script is great. What if the second one sucks,
Uh-huh.
And now luckily I happen to luck into the greatest writing like ever on TV. But my friend was just like, if the second one sucks, just walk away. What are they going to do? They can't make
Uh-huh.
you act, you know?
Right. They just knock you off in the second episode.
Exactly. He goes, so I was a little nervous about the process, but you learn that if the director's happy, then you got to be happy, and
That's
that's
the bad thing about you getting them something is where they got murders because they can always kill you at any moment, you know?
it greatly helps their negotiating position on salaries.
Right,
Believe me.
right. Yeah, that's true. Well, we actually could kill you. Um, so, but that experience now, how was different people that helped you? Gandolfini, was he good to work with?
Yeah, yeah, very lucky. Again, I was very, very lucky because I thought, they may be resentful. I mean, I know what
Uh-huh,
actors go through. My wife's a real actor, and
uh-huh.
the classes and off Broadway, and they're working
Right,
full
right,
time.
right.
And here comes, half a hippie guitar player off the street. And I had said to David Chase earlier, I said, I feel guilty taking an actor's job. I really shouldn't do this.
Uh-huh,
And he said, no, you're not going to take an actor's job. I'm going to write you in a part that does not exist,
uh-huh,
So
uh-huh,
that made me feel a little better, but I didn't know how
uh-huh,
everybody else was going to feel about it. And it turns out that Jimmy and everybody else just really had respect for what I had done in my other life. And
uh-huh.
and they knew I took it seriously. I took it very
Yeah. And you
seriously.
get on the set, if it works, it works, people. There it is.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
I come out of that trailer as Silvio Dante, and I took it very seriously, And I went to the greatest acting school you could ever go to. It was amazing.
Now, had you seen, growing up where you grew up and whatever, in terms of the mob and whatever, I mean, had you seen enough of that? Did that help at all?
Yeah, I
Heard
had.
enough about it, seen enough, whatever it is, you
I
know?
mean, you're never sure, I mean, whether they're the real thing or whether they're
Yeah.
wannabe gangsters, you don't really know the difference
Right.
because they're,
Right.
equally scary when you're young. And they were all over the place, they were all over the
Uh-huh.
Jersey Shore.
Uh-huh.
Every club seemed to have one.
Right. Uh-huh.
Um, so you could observe a
You
bit of
see
that.
enough of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and plus I had been a bit of an aficionado, just it was kind of a hobby with me. I had read every book and seen every movie back to the 30s, and I just kind of felt familiar
Yeah.
that particular
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
genre,
yeah, yeah. Well, I think
and
that helps too, just in terms of, on another level with book writing, if you research enough, at a certain point you get a little more comfortable.
yeah.
And sometimes you're just kidding yourself. Like I do these nonfiction books. This friend of mine, Matt Eversman, he was the actual sergeant who was portrayed in that movie Black Hawk Down, but he was
Oh
he
yeah.
was the actual guy.
Wow.
And I saw him doing interviews with people who've been in combat, and I went, well, he can get people to talk about stuff that, like my dad was in World War II. He never talked. He wouldn't talk about it at all. And but Matt could get him talking about it. And so we did this Walk in my Combat Boots book. It was all interviews, and then we took them and made them these 5 or 6 page stories in which you'd learn about that one person and then a couple of their stories. And at the end of it, our mission was that if you'd been in combat, you would say that Eversman and Patterson got it right. And if you're one of these people that kind of bullshits about stuff you don't really understand, you go like, I had no idea. I really didn't understand what the military is about. I had a wrong idea of it. And at one point, I told Matt, I said, I really understand the military now. And a couple of weeks later, I apologized to him. I said, that's bullshit because I have never shot a gun at anybody and I've never been fired at. So I really don't understand. I understand things about it. I understand that when you're there, you don't want to die and you don't want your brothers and sisters to die around you. I get that camaraderie thing. But I didn't really, there's a lot of it I didn't get, which was interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah. You want to be careful, situations when you're portraying, people that,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
you want to be respectful of that.
Yeah.
And we always
Hmm.
were, we never had any trouble with the real guys, most of them, enjoyed the show, thankfully,
Yeah.
and even
Well,
Lilyhammer.
one of my best friends is a Syrian guy, and it really pisses him off. People would just assume, like, what are you kidding? I mean, just had like my father ran a fruit stand. We didn't, we're not mafia. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, but anyway, it was, it was a, it became a interesting metaphor, I mean, for the strains of balancing one's work and one's family, you know. I think that's where the universal appeal came from, I think. You know, in this case, the work would happen to be a little bit more dramatic than most, but that balance of the family and work, I think, was what was appealing, you know.
Then much later, you got another show, which my wife and I loved, Lilyhammer. My
Oh,
wife's
thank you.
Norwegian, so for starters,
Oh,
she had
wow.
her, you had her with
Okay.
the minute you found that it was good. But I loved that show. I thought it was great. Frank Tagliano and Joe Nesbo. I guess you met a little bit over there,
Yeah,
novelist, mystery writer.
yeah, yeah. I fought very hard to get film incentives, you know, in Norway, you know, which they didn't have.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
It took Joe Nesbo's, you know, he finally, you know, he resisted the film sales for decades, and finally decided to sell one of his books to the movies. And it took that, you know, I went to the prime minister, I went to the cultural minister. I was like, you know, if Joe Nesbo does his first, you know, movie, you know, in Iceland, you know, you can start packing your suitcase right now, okay?
Uh-huh.
Because, you
Uh-huh.
know,
Uh-huh.
because
Uh-huh.
he's such a national treasure over there, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
you go into an airport and there's like a room of his books, you know.
Yes, I know. It irritates me, and none of mine. It pisses me off, but I don't sound scared. I don't know why. It's Scandinavia. I don't. And I
you,
said, my wife's, she's Norwegian, you know. But her father is so Norwegian. You know, they do those little tests where you spit on the thing. He's like 100% Norwegian. Like nobody in his family even kissed anybody who wasn't Norwegian. I mean, it's like ludicrous, you know. Yeah. So the one little thing, this is weird to me, not in a big way, but a little weird. I know Sylvester Stallone a little bit. King of Tulsa, man, it's just sort of like the same story, you know. You know,
yeah.
he goes to Tulsa and he starts a nightclub. I mean, come on,
One of the writers apologized to me, you know.
really, yeah, it's a little close there.
Yeah, it was an obvious influence,
Yeah, and
but
I like Taylor Sheridan's very talented, but
yeah, yeah,
uh,
and
good,
I
really good writer, really good writer.
yeah, you know, and I love Stallone, so you know, I was fine with it. You know, I'm like, you know, whatever.
Well,
You
he's
know.
down here. He lives most of the time pretty close to us down here.
Yeah, he moved recently down there. Yeah, yeah,
I don't know why, but
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
there it is.
we're all gonna end up
So
there, I
you were
think.
talking about this restless thing, and it fits into a lot of the stuff that you've been talking about, doing the right thing and politics and whatever, and staying busy. And one of the things is this Teach Rock thing, which you've been involved with, which I love. Just to look, I don't know if everybody understands that, but how does that work? I mean, I love the idea, but yeah, yeah,
Well, you know, I just took a look at what's going on in education right now, which is a little
yeah,
bit shocking.
yeah,
The No Child Left Behind legislation canceled all the arts classes in
yeah,
in public education, and so it was a way of getting the arts into the DNA of public education,
hmm,
and that's where it started. That was the
yeah,
idea, you know. And in the end, you know, we're basically we're teaching through popular music. We're teaching history. We're
yeah,
teaching it's cross curricular. You know,
yeah,
it works in math class. It works in science class. It works, you know, in any of the disciplines, and any
right,
grade levels. And we're having great success with it. We have over 75,000 teachers now using it and having amazing success with it. And we worked about 15 years on the content to
uh-huh,
make
uh-huh,
certain, because I didn't want it to be an after-school class. I wanted it to be
right,
part of the, you know, the normal classroom, and I didn't want art to be separate from the other disciplines. The idea here is to
right,
integrate art into
yeah,
into science, you know, into
yeah.
technology. You know, so that people have a better way of understanding the disciplines.
And they're relevant and interesting to them. There's no
Yes,
point. Look, what if your objective is for the kids to learn? Then, if that's it, you want them to learn. So, what's going to help them to learn? In reading, if you want kids to read, don't give them books that turn them off.
that's right.
Give them books that turn them on. It's so simple. Like,
I,
why Board of Education, whoever the hell's watching, stop doing this. You give them stuff that, Shakespeare eventually, but not like in fifth grade.
No,
You got to give them stuff where I have a kids imprint. I wrote a lot of kids books, and the thing was, in the imprint, when a kid finishes a Jimmy book, they'll say, "Give me another book," as opposed to the millions of kids in the country who've never read one book that they liked.
that's
Turn
great.
them on, don't turn them off. It's so simple. How do you turn them on? Tell them stories. How do you turn them on? Give them music, get them things that they relate to.
That's the key.
If they don't relate to it, if it's not relevant, nobody wants to read about stuff or learn, it doesn't make any sense to me.
No, no, and I congratulate you on that because that's not easy to do, it's wonderful that you're doing that. Yes, you got to go to them. Give them something they can use
Yeah.
right now. Okay, you
Uh-huh.
can't do what they
Uh-huh.
did to us, which was learn this now and someday you'll use it.
Memorize it.
Those,
No.
those days are
Why
over.
should I?
They got to give a kid a reason to be there. Why am I here when I can get any
Yeah.
answer I want on this device in 30 seconds?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Right.
you got so we go to them and we
That
just
is a problem, by the way. I can get any answer, but they never really actually get some idea of, okay, what is history? History it's not about memorizing a lot of names and dates. It's, in my opinion, and in most nonfiction, it's about understanding something.
that's right. And
Okay. Revolutionary War, you don't have to know all the dates. You don't have to know Civil War. You don't have to know all the, you know,
no, no,
it's a funny thing. I have one of my best friend, one of my best friends is a teacher, and he was down in Charleston, and some kids and teacher were at Fort Sumter, and they were looking at it, and and this little black kid, he's about 10 years old, and he looks at this thing. He said, "You all have a battle here," and it was so. I mean, like amazing. Like, okay, yep. We're gonna, but make it relevant to the Civil War, a very relevant thing if you can get to so that they understand it, not the dates, not the it doesn't matter whether you know the Battle of Bull Run, that's not important, but you understand what the hell was going on there.
yeah, got to be more practical for this generation. I mean, we started off with the three basic missions, which was keep the DNA in the public education system, number one. Number two, give them a new methodology to learn because
Yeah.
the old methodology
Uh-huh.
is irrelevant. And
Uh-huh.
number
Uh-huh.
three, and number three, if we can keep them, if a kid likes one class or one teacher, they'll come to
Yeah.
school. And we want to keep
Yeah.
them, we're trying to raise the graduation rate, because the dropout
Yeah.
rate is just outrageous. It's
Oh yeah, I know, I know.
close to
Well,
50.
that's the thing that I've been working with the University of Florida for a while now, and it's just getting kids to read at grade level, which is hugely important. Just read at grade level. You don't have to go to Harvard. We're just going to get you to the point where you can read, because if you can't read, once you get to fifth grade or something, you can't read okay, you're not going to get to high school.
Yeah.
It's just impossible. So you got to get them. And they actually have a program where the average, which is a disgrace in the country, is like 43% of kids reading at grade level. They can get it up into the 80s. And we've strangely, Florida is doing pretty well in terms of that because they've used this method a bit in Florida. So they're up into the 50s, which is actually pretty good. It's not great, but they're, because they're only in about a third of the counties here. But that thing of like, if your objective is, and it's such a big, you'll save thousands of lives. If you could get this country up into the 70s in terms of kids reading at grade level, you will save thousands of lives. You just will. Because
Yeah.
that number of kids, millions of kids will get through high school. If they don't get through high school, that's a bad start.
That's it. I mean, at least, it doesn't guarantee anything, but if they graduate high school, at least they got a shot. It
Yeah.
really, it changes the entire percentage of those who are going to end up in the justice system.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
But we have found, enormous success with reading by just giving them biographies of their favorite artists. Okay,
Uh-huh,
it's simple as that. Okay,
Yeah.
you love,
Stories.
Beyonce. Here's the story of Beyonce.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and man, they'll read it, because it applies to their lives, and anything that's useful to them, they want to learn.
yeah.
Kids want
And
to
they
learn.
get a frame of reference.
Yeah, yeah.
So that helps. Yep,
So,
yep, yep.
yeah, we've had enormous success with that, and now So we spent like 15 years just on that content, but
Yeah,
now in the last 2 years now, we've now taken one more step even further, because there's an epidemic right now of alienation and isolation,
yeah,
a certain kind of bizarre um, effect of the social media and these devices have had
yeah,
on the kids' psyches. And so
yeah,
we now have a new program called Harmony, the first 20 minutes of homeroom. And it's going to sound silly to our generation, but we have them put the device away and just talk to each other. All right, just
yeah,
look in somebody's eyes, okay,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you know what's going on at home. You know what's your
Uh-huh.
favorite music, what you know, just conversation,
Yeah,
and say meet the person sitting next to you. You know, we do a circle like the Native American circle, and meet the people next to you, and
yeah,
suddenly, like maybe it's an immigrant kid, or maybe it's a kid from out of state, or maybe it's just somebody who's shy.
yeah,
Suddenly, so we realized we have to prepare kids to be educated at this point. Okay,
yeah,
never mind the
yeah,
content of the education or the
yeah,
methodology of the education. We have to prepare
yeah,
them to be educated. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And so
yeah,
it's a whole
100%.
other thing where we've now raised the bar on that kind of communicating, making sure that they can communicate with each other, uh,
Yeah.
and helping out that isolation and alienation.
No, it's hard, hard, hard. The worst audience I ever had. I went to my nephew's fourth grade. The worst audience, the toughest audience, impossible. I didn't know what the hell to do, and I'm okay presenter, but it was like, damn. And teachers have to do that every day. I have actually a book. My mother was a teacher for I don't know 50 years or something, but I have a book on teachers coming out next year, and it's the same thing. These interviews that you turn into the 5 page. And
Yeah,
so that people can begin to understand how hard that is now.
yeah,
Because these poor teachers, the kids are more undisciplined than they've ever been. The parents are on them. The Board of Education's on them. The left's on them. The right's on them. It's just like, oh, why am I doing this? This is crazy. And they're not allowed to teach. They're not allowed. Somebody's telling them how to do it.
yeah. We're really taking all that into consideration, and we're having an amazing success right now. So I'm very happy with what
Yeah,
we're
no,
doing.
no, no. It's a great area. And one of the weird things, all the debates, blah, 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 nobody ever talks about education. What is that all about?
No,
Because people don't think it's important because they're crazy, you know? Of
yeah.
course it's important. Of course
Take
it's
it for
important.
granted. You take it for granted, and most people don't know what to do with it. That's why we avoid the national bureaucracy. We all my funding is private. We're not doing any government grants or anything like that. So I
Uh-huh.
don't have to wait around for anybody's permission. We change very very quickly if we have to, or add something or take away something, or if we miss something, a teacher reminds us. It's in the next day, and it goes
Hmm.
digitally, so it's world
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
easily.
Uh-huh.
You know, and we just license. We giving the teachers tools to do their thing, man. And we figure if we make the teachers happy, they'll make the kids happy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
Now
So
that's the thing with this program actually at the University of Florida. The what I love about it is it's just practical because the kids are in the school, the teachers are in the school, and it's right there. So we can do as opposed to there's a thing in Florida which on the face of it you go, well, that sounds good, but it really is stupid because because they what they do is they send a book a month to these kids where they don't have books in their homes.
hmm.
But the problem with it, it's very expensive, A. B, they're not really getting books that the kids are going to go, that was great. So the kids get the book, it sucks. They throw it away. Or some of them, a lot of them. The parents aren't into reading anyway, and they're spending incredible amount of money doing it. So on theory, you go like, oh, that's great. So but the reality of it is, wait a minute. No, it's not really going to make sense.
They're sending.
And people will sit there on the face of it and go, that's great, getting them where the teachers and the kids are in the class and just making it with what this does is it helps the teachers to be even better teachers, which they love. The kids get, learn faster than they ever learn. So the kids are happy, the teachers are happy. This is good. And they're right there. What's the problem? That this is a good thing.
But they're sending physical books.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah.
enormously expensive.
Yeah, it is. It
And
is. Yeah.
that.
And in theory, you go, cool, but then one is they're not curating them the way they need to. It needs to be books. Once again, Jimmy Books, if it doesn't turn the kid on, it turns the kid off. And that's not good. At any rate, so what else? You got anything coming that's got you excited?
I'm making a move back into, we're finishing the Canadian tour now, through November, and then coming back to Europe next summer for a couple of postponed shows, about a
Uh-huh.
dozen shows. So I got a 5 month gap between November and May. I'm trying to talk to people about coming back into the business, getting something on TV, getting back into acting. Uh,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and then after next summer, I want to do back and get a series on TV or something serious.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Uh,
Uh-huh.
I got like 4 scripts of my own, 4 pilot scripts, and it doesn't have to be one of my own, but I just got a new agency, and I'm letting it be known that I'm coming back into the business as far as an actor. So I miss that. I want to get back into it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, the whole Hollywood, it is what it is. I so you write a Hollywood novel, and I would never write one, but I have the first line if I did. Hello, I lied. Uh, yeah, whatever. And they don't have to. You don't have to be that way. It's okay. You can tell us the truth. And I know we're artists and we're talent, but you can tell us the truth. It's all right. Pacino's book, by the way, is very good in terms of acting.
Oh,
Really, really good. Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
new.
yeah.
That's brand new, right?
It is, and he really gets into it in terms of, he you get that he's squirrely, but how he really, one, it didn't happen overnight with him. But how, how he struggles to get into the character, which is very revealing and good. So
Interesting.
anyway,
Well,
so this has been great. Thank you so much.
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
had a lot of fun. It was good. I like this thing of talking about new things to do, these interviews. As I said, we're going to do Carville next week, and it's fun. It's neat. So anyway, thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And congratulations on all your success. You know, you're, uh,
Yeah.
you're,
Yeah, the bad thing is I wake up in the morning, I go to the mirror, I go, you again. All right. Be
all right.
good.
Okay.
Thank
You
you.
too. All right. Bye bye.